and here's the pad from the inside on this side. All right, it is 5:30 on a Thursday. I got a call from a friend of mine who said that she had some noise going on in the back of her truck. Took her truck into the dealership, and they said she needed rear brakes, and that it was going to be like $600 to do rear brakes on a Toyota 4Runner. So there's no way it costs that much. So I am going to load up some tools and drive over and help her out so that she can get to work in the morning, because that is what friends do and the right thing to do, because these dealership prices are ridiculous. So I'm going to throw some tools in the car and get on the road and take you along for the ride. So I've got tools loaded up, got got some gas, snacks, water, whatever. Got about an hour drive over to her house, and then get everything going here. So I'm going to walk you guys through and show you just how easy this actually is, because I feel like a lot of people don't know just how easy it is to actually do your own brakes and how much money you can save. It's a good skill to have, and so I'll take you along and kind of show you the steps along the process. But, you know, I put out a video a couple weeks ago. I think the title of it's like Pico pre-inspection for camping or off-roading, and this is now the second one of my friends that has reached out and asked for some help because something is just not right on their vehicle that they're finding out after the fact. So, you know, this instance, this cost her a $200 diagnostic fee because she wasn't really sure what the noise was. And then, you know, the cost of rotors and pads on top of that, because the pads got so low they ate into the rotors, which I'll show you when we get there. But, you know, if this would have been just a simple inspection, something that she probably could have done herself for 60, maybe 75 bucks for, you know, quality parts. So, but anyways, I got some driving to do. So in the meantime, I'll throw in some clips here of when I helped my buddy Eric fix noise on his truck. So go ahead and check that out. Check back in when we get there. He hit me up a couple days later and said, man, that noise has gotten worse. Stuck my head under there, and I think I figured out what's going on. He just got this vehicle recently, so we're gonna get him fixed. This is Eric, and we are working on his truck. So 2017 TRD Pro Tacoma are running the Icon upper control arms, and right here is the problem. So his upper control arm through bolt, the nut backed off of it and actually came off, and then the bushing fell out. If you want to see how to do it, it's basically the exact same as my control arm install video, and I'll link that one and you guys can check that out. So, got his upper control arm out and pulled what was left of the bushings out. So those two halves are all that was left. There was one half on one side and one half on the other side with 3 washers. So here is the new ones. So it's got the centerpiece and both halves. We'll get these slammed back together, get it installed, get it all torqued up, and then we can grease the ball joint and both bushings. If you jack the vehicle up, see where I've got pressure down here on this lower knuckle, where you have the whole suspension at ride height, then because it's at ride height and supported, then when you put this all back together, you can torque that upper control arm bolt to spec with it on the jack. You don't have to wait until it's down on the ground because it is under tension. All right, we got this side all done. You can see new bushings and washers up in there. Well, one new washer. Lost one, but we went ahead and put some Loctite on that end and torqued it to 85 foot-pounds. This lower bolt, torque spec says 81, and then we greased his upper ball joint and both of the grease certs down underneath for the control arms. So Eric's doing this one basically on his own, just kind of talking him through it. So next thing we're going to do, we got this nut loosened up down here. So these flat spots right here on the ends, like I said in my other video, you just hit them a few times and then that'll come loose and it'll pop right out of there. There it is. Got Eric's truck all done. Eric got to learn how to do it all on its own. He already knew what he was doing, just not on the truck, so it was easy enough. So just got here. We are going to pull the wheels off real quick, and as I told you, I'm going to kind of walk you through it because it is way easier than everybody thinks it is. So I'm going to give the camera over to Anne-Marie, so if the footage is crappy, blame her, and I'll walk you through what to do. Alright, so first thing you can do, chalk the wheel. Whatever slant the driveway is, chalk the wheel. Next, break loose the lug nuts. If they have a wheel key, find it, breaker bar, and then I use these flip sockets, pick them up at Harbor Freight. Basically, this size is a 21 millimeter, flip it over. This one is a 19 millimeter. It's the two most common lug nut sizes. These wheel keys, this back one will fit the 19. The forward one will fit the 21. So at the end of the video, I will total up the cost of tools for everything that we use, and I would bet that we are still far under what the shop was going to charge her to do these, even if you had to buy your own tools. Jack up the vehicle. Rear end is very easy. Come all the way under, and the center differential, right in the middle of it. And then as you start going up, just go up kind of slow so that it can roll back into that wheel chock. And the tires don't have to be that far off the ground, only far enough to get through. Now, raise your jack handle up, because if it's down low, people will trip on it easy. If it's up higher, you might catch a knee, but you're less likely to knock it out of there. With the wheel off back here, since we're doing pads and rotors, you got to get, these are the bolts to pull the main caliper off if you're only doing the pads. Since we're doing rotors also, we got to get this caliper bracket off, and that's these bolts right here. So there's one on the top and one on the bottom. There are two types of calipers. If you can see here, there's this style that's hollow in the middle, okay, and these just press in. There's another style that this is all solid, and they'll either have like a cross or a flat or some little like dimples on the side. Those are twist in style, and there's a tool that you can rent to do that. But since these are just press in style, we'll get the tool here and I'll show you how to press those in. But first thing, before you compress these, you want to check the fluid level under the hood to make sure that nobody topped it off, because as you compress this, you'll overflow that and brake fluid will eat paint. So we want to make sure we're not going to do that. So you take an old brake pad and you put it in against the piston, and then you take your tool and it slides in where the other brake pad would go. It should just slide in just like that, and then as you twist this, it'll collapse that piston. So I'll go ahead and do this while Anne-Marie watches the fluid. Alright, so now this rotor is stuck on here. There's a couple things you can do. You can hit it with a dead blow hammer, a rubber mallet. You don't necessarily want to hit it with a metal hammer in case you're going to reuse the rotors. But if you look, these holes right here are threaded. And these are threaded so that you screw a bolt in and you put pressure against that backing plate to pop this off under mechanical advantage. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. I always keep some extra bolts in my bag for just such an occasion. Now on the bolts, you want to make sure that they are flat like this. Find something that threads in there and get it started. They don't have to be super long, just long enough to put pressure in there. And actually, the shorter they are, the better off you are. a couple turns once it gets under tension. Same thing on the other side. And there, just popped all that rust and debris and everything else loose. A couple more turns, and you're loose. Simple like that. Don't have to be beating on stuff. So now we'll throw the new rotor on, get the new pad slapped on. So you're wondering, how do I know if I need to replace my rotors if they're not grinding metal on metal? So you can take the back of your fingernail and run it up, and there's not really much of a lip here.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
And it's not all wavy.
Backside's a little worse, but
so it's not terrible. This rotor would be okay to reuse, especially on the rear. But we know that the other side is metal on metal grinding, so we're just going to replace them both. Now, when you get your new rotors, there's Cosmoline all over the face of this that they package them with to keep them from rusting. So we'll take a little degreaser and we'll wipe this off on both faces as well as the parking brake face also. So get that done. Anybody that's ever used these kind of gloves, you know, as you're working on stuff, they get dirty, they rip whatever, and you peel them off, you go to put new ones on, your hands are all sweaty and it's super hard to get them on. Just double glove right away. So you put on 2 layers now, and then if one rips, or like I know I'm about to be handling some brake grease, then when they get dirty, I can peel the top layer off, and I can put another layer on real easy without having to wait, dry your hands off and all that. And they slide real nice over the old gloves. So there you go. Oh, I'm nervous for a second. There's 2 sets of holes. It wasn't fitting in the other ones. When you get your new rotor on, sometimes they'll want to kick side to side on you. The rear ones are usually pretty good, but if not, you can just take a lug nut and sink it on and hold everything in place. I'm not worried about these, so we won't mess with that. But put your brake caliper bracket back on first. It'll be much easier to tighten these down without the other caliper and everything in the way. So we'll get these in, and before we put them in, I'm going to take some grease and I'm going to put it right here where the pad slides here and the pad slides here. If it comes with new hardware, go ahead and use that. If not, you can see where the marks are, where stuff gets worn on it otherwise. So you can just put it there. You can buy this for about $12 for this bottle. Even with me working on cars all the time, I've had this bottle for like 3 or 4 years. So it doesn't take very much. And this stuff is rated to 425 degrees. The little packets that they sell you at the checkout stand are only rated to like 250 degrees, maybe not even that. You got to remember your engine compartment is already 200 degrees. So on like front brakes, if you get into a heavy braking situation, that stuff just melts off. That's why your brakes start squeaking all the time. So this stuff, much better, and it's not that expensive, and it'll last you a long time. Alright, so looking at the old brake pads, if you don't know, this right here is a little squeaker. Some people call it a tattletale, but squeaks when your brakes are low. These pads are relatively low. They're probably down around, I don't know, 30%, 20%. But if you look, I don't know if the light will catch it, if we put a screwdriver across that, you can see that gap right there, how much further it has to go before it starts making any noise. So, and the other side already is metal on metal. That's why, like I was saying in the video before, it's a good idea to check on this stuff. Pull your wheel off, because all it takes is a quick visual inspection to see there's not much pad left there. So, compared to the new ones, you can see how much more pad there is. So you definitely want to make sure and get those replaced, especially because these rear pads were what, 40, 50 bucks? $37. So for $37, she could have saved herself $120 in rotors by only replacing the pads. New brake pads. It didn't come with the new hardware, so we're actually going to transfer these over. If you look, it's kind of hard to tell, but it's thicker over here and thinner on this side, so it was kind of sideways in there. You can tell by the mark on the back here that this was the front one, because that's the same shape as the caliper. So if we put it in the same position it was, and then look at the taper, it tapers more at the front. So when I put these back together, I'm going to move this squealer to the top on the outside so you can get a good visual on it. And I'm guessing the other side is completely undone. So even though these have one on both sides, I'm only going to put it on the outside of the top one in the rear, if that makes sense. Now, this brake grease that we used on the caliper bracket, you also put it on the back of the pads. It doesn't take a whole lot. It just needs a thin coating, and then you also want to make sure that you get here in the edges. That's where dirt and stuff gets underneath of these little shims, and that's what makes it start squeaking when you can't figure out why you still got brake pad life left, but it's squeaking. So you just get it in there, make sure you don't get any on the face of the brake pad. Nice thin coat, and then we'll install it like that. All right, so when you go to put your pads in, a lot of times it's hard. Most people will try to rock it in, you know, bottom to top or top to bottom, whatever. The easiest way to do it is to put inside in, and that way you can get even pressure across it, and then you just rock them into place, and then just push it in, do the same thing on the back side. And the last piece of the puzzle is these pins that hold your caliper to the bracket. You can see there's some grease on the tip of this here. That's what actually allows that caliper to slide. As you hit the brakes, it allows it to slide in, make contact, and then as you let off, it comes out. Some vehicles will have a rubber piece on the end here. Pay attention to which top or bottom that rubber piece comes out of, because it matters when it goes back in. Usually, in my experience, it's on the bottom, because that's more likely to get in water where it wants the water protection for that O-ring. So these, again, doesn't take much. You're going to want to wipe off the excess old grease if there is any. And then they just take a thin coating of new grease. The pin itself, as far as on the face of it, you don't want to put very much, because as you slide it in, it's all going to get wiped off anyways. So the main thing is, just like when it came out, just get a little bit on the end there. And we'll put these in, get them torqued down. Torque specs. The bracket to the knuckle is 91 foot-pounds, and the caliper to the bracket says 80, but that seems like a lot. It's excessive to me. That's what the book says. Definitely check your book and make sure you're doing it to whatever manufacturer specification is, because if you break one of these, you're going to have a real bad day, especially if it's late at night and the part stores are already closed. So we'll get this put back together and get on to the other side. So in my previous video, I talked about tools you might want to take with you out on the trail. This little tool is definitely something that I would keep in your bag for the trail. They're like 20 or 25 bucks. If you run into an issue, like if this would have happened out on the trail, all she would have needed to do is pull this brake caliper off, pull the pads out of it, take this tool, stick it in there, and tighten it down, okay? Once it's tightened down, zip tie it in place, zip tie the caliper up out of the way. Then you can put your wheel and tire back on, and you can drive off the trail, because as you're braking, it's going to brake against this and not allow your brake fluid to push past and not allow this to grind. You don't have to clamp any lines. You don't have to do any damage to anything else on the vehicle. Even if you ruin this, you're out 25 bucks instead of hundreds of dollars in other parts. So something to keep in mind. I talked about checking your tires and the DOT code. So you can see right here, they're usually in this little oval, 21, 24. That is the 21st week in 2024. So these were made roughly middle of June 2024, brand new tire. So that's what you want to check. If they're like 6, 7 years old, think about getting new tires. 8 or more years, definitely time to replace them. Good idea to check those if you're going to buy a used vehicle also. This side all done, got the wheel back on. I basically just snugged them. Obviously you can't tighten them because the wheel's off the ground, but just snug them. And then the important thing also at this point is, once you get the wheel back on, go inside the truck and push the brake pedal gently a few times to let that caliper get back in contact with the pads, even before you go to the other side. And that way, when you start on the other side, you have room in your reservoir for that fluid to come back up. So we got this side all done. We'll knock out the other side real quick. All right, something to think about when you're using ratchets, breaking bolts loose. Everybody wants to grip tight. And what happens is when this breaks loose, your hand's going to slip and you're going to go right into the ground. So you do it open palm instead, and that way when it breaks loose, your hand's open, you don't hurt yourself. So we were talking about greasing and lubing up those sliders. Here's the pad on the outside from this side. And here's the pad from the inside on this side. It is metal on metal. So get this rotor off. I'll show you the back side of that rotor too. I wonder what else these rotors fit, whether double drilled. So that is what a grooved rotor looks like. And you can see this lip. So even if this was smooth, if that lip was that big, you wouldn't want to do that. This side has got a little lip, but it's not bad. That is unserviceable. That's why we're replacing them. So you need torque lug nuts. You want to go in a crisscross pattern. So here, 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 here. And then it's usually a good idea to go back around them a second time. If you don't own a torque wrench, you can rent them from O'Reilly. And then they don't charge you anything for the rental. Basically, you put a deposit, and then when you bring it back, you get it back. But if you're going to start doing your own work, you definitely should. For stuff like this, you don't need some fancy high-end torque wrench. These inexpensive ones will do you just fine. If you're going to start doing engine work and stuff like that, I would recommend getting a high-end, reputable brand. Alright, so tools we use. Floor jack, obviously. Wheel chock. We've got a torque wrench with our flip socket on it. That's a half-inch breaker bar. This is a 3/8 drive ratchet, but 3/8 breaker bar would have worked also. 3-inch extension, 17 millimeter. Another 3/8 ratchet. I like the swivel head ones, doesn't have to be. And then this is a 12 millimeter socket, only for the bolts that pop the brake rotors off. So, caliper, piston reset tool, brake grease, gloves, degreaser, shop towels, and a light. So there you go. Not very many tools at all. Like I said, I'll show a screen right here with all of the price breakdown of everything. Just to give you an idea, she was quoted $655.64 from the dealership in order to do this job, and she paid $179.23 for pads and rotors for both sides. So roughly a $500 savings, $490, something like that, but basically $500 savings to learn how to do it yourself, and it took us 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes. Probably would have been much shorter than that. Obviously, filming takes more time and explaining things. So there you go. Hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and $500. So thanks for watching.